And ladies and gentlemen, the shoe has officially fallen as Joel Embiid has been suspended for shoving Philadelphia Inquirer Marcus Hayes in the latest off-court situation before the Sixers superstar has even stepped foot on the floor. I'm going to break down what we know from Shams Charania, what to take from this 3-game suspension, and why this may mean that Joel Embiid is returning to the basketball court sooner rather than later. So let's dive into what we know. That we did get this update from Shams Charania saying that the NBA has suspended Philadelphia 76ers Joel Embiid for 3 games for the altercation shoving a columnist in the post-game locker room. And they also released this press release here saying November 5th, 2024, the Philadelphia 76ers center Joel Embiid has been suspended 3 games without pay for shoving a member of the media. It was announced today by Joe Dumars, Executive Vice President, Head of Basketball Operations. Embiid's actions took place in 76ers locker room after the team's 124-107 loss to the Memphis Grizzlies on Saturday at the Wells Fargo Center. Quote, mutual respect is paramount to the relationship between players and media in the NBA, Dumars said. While we understand Joel was offended by the personal matter of the original version of the reporter's column, interactions must remain professional on both sides and can never turn physical. Embiid's suspension will commence with the next NBA regular season game for which he is eligible and able to play, which is a key part there, and I do want to circle back to that. But first, to acknowledge things head on, it felt like this was coming. I'm not surprised Joel Embiid is suspended for this situation, but I do hate that he's the only guy taking the brunt of things here. And I know I gave a pretty vivid deep dive on kind of my first take on this, but did get a little bit more clarity on the situation. Once again, I do have a fairly strong relationship with a number of the guys on the beat reporters and did do that for a season myself, which I love doing that. It was very cool to experience kind of the inside the locker room feeling and get a chance to talk to each and every one of these players. So I don't take that opportunity for granted. I was very grateful to receive it during that time. I would love to get back there. And to be honest, I hate watching people who it does feel like take it for granted. And a guy like Marcus Hayes in this situation is a repeat offender of writing offensive content about players that does cross the line. And I don't think Joel has any reason to apologize for taking offense to this. And what Joel said, kind of verbatim, and there's a lot of, curse words edited out of this, but what his direct message to Marcus Hayes was before the altercation occurred was, you can tell me I suck, you can tell me I'm the worst basketball player you've ever seen, just keep my family out of your mouth. Which is completely fair from a media standpoint. That should not be a tough hurdle to clear or something to simply understand what your role is. And the number one role in journalism is don't make yourself the story, and that's exactly what Marcus Hayes did here. So while Joel is taking the public brunt of this, whatever you want to say here, I really am most curious to see what is the situation with Marcus Hayes, and I have seen the reports of the Sixers apologizing to him, all those things. They have to do that. That's not something that panics me overly, but I do think it would be more offensive to Joel Embiid if that man is allowed it in the locker room once again, especially with myself knowing how strict they are with kind of getting the actual press credentials. And for this specific situation, I can speak to, I know the media outlet oftentimes means a lot more than the individual person. So in this case, the Philadelphia Inquirer has a, running seat for as often as they want it. But if guys are going to abuse that power or not do their job properly, they should be punished for it, and that's exactly what happens here. So a couple more things on the overall suspension as a whole. For starters, this is going to cost Joel Embiid $1 million, a little bit over $1 million here. I will also note this is on top of the $100,000 fine that the investigation brought on the Sixers organization for him not playing just this season. So we're already down 2 investigations before Joel Embiid has stepped on the floor yet this year. We also, by the way, I did want to make sure I gave this a shout out from Jason Richardson here, who was a part of the original Joel Embiid team when he first came to the Sixers, and he tweeted out a little bit of support. He's not the only one, but I thought he hit the nail on the head here, and he tweeted, "This article by Marcus Hayes about Joel Embiid is truly heartless. I was teammates with Joel when he received the devastating news about his brother's passing, and it's shocking to see this tragedy exploited by Marcus to negatively sensationalize Joel's reasons for not playing." Shaking my head. And to directly address the column once again, Hayes' point in the column is not one that should be dismissed. That there is a fair case to be made about Joel Embiid not playing basketball regular enough. But the way to do that is not bringing up his dead brother and his son who's named after him. That is crossing a line, and I guess we've seen a lot this weekend with the Jason Kelce and another clear example of kind of how blurred the line has come for a lot of people between social media and reality here. Marcus Hayes, to his credit, I guess, stepped in the locker room and basically didn't back down to Joel. But where does that get you? What does this accomplish for everyone? For the Philadelphia Inquirer, is it great that your writer is firing up the Sixers, or firing up the star of the Sixers, so getting him suspended for games for the altercation? Is it a win in your book that you've got this type of reaction out of an athlete, that they never are going to want to talk to this guy once again, and Joel's made that crystal clear? Like, I just get lost in what's the benefit. Yes, it's fair to be critical of guys. His point in the column overall was fair. There's a case to be made there, but you lose all sorts of credibility or value, in your opinion, when you start throwing in things like this. And once again, I want to reinforce that this is not a one-time thing. And I know I mentioned that I do have a good relationship with a number of the media members. I will note Marcus Hayes is not somebody I've ever met or talked to in person. I've had one interaction with him over email, which, by the way, happened on a previous article about Joel Embiid that I thought was unfair, and reached out to kind of give my opinion. And I thought I was ultimately respectful with it. He never replied to it, but basically my thoughts were, but the fact that I'm having this reaction and wanting to reach out means you're doing your job. But that's coming from me, a guy who likes the Sixers, follows the team, does his own work on it. That was something that I thought I could reach out to. If Joel Embiid is having those types of reactions, it's a different story, and that's the reality for where we're at. Now, I did want to circle back to the press release here for the one key line at the bottom here that I want to make sure of, which says, Embiid's suspension will commence with the next NBA regular season game for which he is eligible and able to play. So the obvious caveat here being that Joel has not stepped foot on the floor this season. They're not going to just count games that he would have been resting or sitting out or injured or whatever you want to say in that suspension there. So what does that mean from here? The Sixers are on a West Coast trip, and we did get conveniently this update also today, which I do not think is coincidental. And it said this from Shams Charania. Shout out to Philly Sixers Galaxy as always. But from Shams Charania, he says the Sixers will have a, quote, better sense of Joel Embiid's status for tomorrow's game against the Los Angeles Clippers later today. This, of course, being tweeted out and being reported before the suspension did come out. So when looking at the Sixers schedule from here, we can see that they do start out. They obviously played the Suns last night. They will play the Clippers tomorrow in the Paul George return, which is going to be an electric night. I'm very excited to see them play into the Intuit Dome and all these storylines, James Harden, Paul George, all these things. Going to be a great game. Then, of course, there's Friday with the Lakers, Sunday with the Hornets, and those would be the 3 games that the suspension would carry over for, assuming that it starts tomorrow. So that is my expectation for Joel Embiid and the Sixers, is that I think they put him as active on the injury report starting tomorrow. He misses those 3 games, that being tomorrow, Friday, and Sunday. And then Tuesday, conveniently, against the New York Knicks for the NBA Cup Day 1 would be the debut for Joel Embiid this season. So I don't think that is the worst case situation here. To be honest, you could make the case that this suspension is at least giving us a little more clarity, although we do need to see that fully come in action. Where my panic meter will start to sound is if we get the injury report tomorrow and Joel Embiid is still ruled out, not active, and this is not counting towards the suspension, because this is just further evidence that there is something deeper down going on with Joel Embiid. At this point, it is what it is. Eat the suspension. Hopefully this is the last of the actual off-court incidents with Joel Embiid, and we can focus on just basketball from now on. This has been, even by Sixers standards, a bizarre start to the season, and one that has not been the most conducive to winning as an organization, but this all could be put in the path once this team is fully constructed, healthy, and is just focusing on basketball. So I did think last night was a step in the right direction. The fact that Paul George returned to the floor, again, I understand it's a loss, but the Phoenix Suns are a good team, and they fought for the most part hard. There's things to nitpick in the way the Sixers played, the lack of execution down the stretch, Tyrese Maxey not getting the ball enough, all those types of things. I did touch on that in a previous video, talking most specifically about the last shot between Maxey and Paul George and what really should have gone down there, who I blame, all those types of things. You can check that out in a previous video, but I still take it as a positive that we are inching in the right direction and that this team is still going to be a contender when everything is all said and done. While this is a frustrating start to the season, the better days are ahead for this Sixers team, and I do think we have finally reached the eye of the storm as far as how this season started out. So unfortunately for Joel Embiid, you're gonna have to keep doing exactly what you have been doing and sitting on the bench, cheering on your team and watching these games take place. But it does feel like we're inching closer to the Sixers season actually starting with the big fella on the floor. So while it has not been great, buckle up, Sixers fans, because now we're starting to get started on the right stuff this year. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Once again, I get the NBA setting the precedent that you can't have players putting hands on reporters. It's fair to draw a line there, and that isn't anything that can happen straight up. Like, even in this situation, Joel Embiid being just the size that he is, he's a monster. He's going to be bigger than every human being on earth, that you can't have altercations having there. I understand acknowledging that he crossed the line. And my last note that I'll just hang on this specific is I do think Shove is doing quite a bit of heavy lifting from the descriptions of the events that I have read and heard here. It did feel like it was much more of one of those like stand up, get in his face. And I'll guess I'll have a little more context here. Is I also heard Marcus was kind of not backing down in that locker room here, that he started off wanting to give an apology. Joel was having none of it, saying, "You've done this plenty of times. I'm not accepting the apology." And then Joel making a comment of, "I don't care what the media says," to which Marcus snidely chimes in, "But you do," which kind of led to this going down. So he's not blameless. If anything, he's the primary reason to blame, and I cannot wait to hear. I hope he never steps foot in that locker room once again. But it is Joel Embiid that is the guy that has more to lose, that is this public-facing figure, and is the guy that ultimately will carry this 3-game suspension. So let me know what you guys think in the comments from here. Did the NBA get it right? Is this completely uncalled for? Open to whatever your thoughts are below. Make sure you're smashing that subscribe button if you have not already. Dropping a like on this video, and I'll be talking with you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.